Welcome to Geneva and welcome to the vFlyteAir Piper Twin Comanche. Today we're going to be starting a flight from Geneva to Zurich. We're going to take it all the way up to taxiing to the runway for departure. I already have a video on the channel on starting the aircraft, so this is going to be a practical example of how you put all of that together. As you can see, it's quite dark. It's 7 AM. So the first thing that we'll do is turn on the overhead light. We have a little bit of difficulty here because we can't see the trim setting. You can see obviously you can see the handle for the trim, but you can't actually see the indicator. Okay, let's turn the yoke off. Now in the last update, persistent switches were added. So the first thing that we need to do is make sure that all the switches are in the off position. I have mixed feelings about persistent switches because if you end a flight in the air, then you're going to have switches in quite odd positions. I think I'd prefer a series of random button and control switches that all correspond to possible positions for those switches to be in. I think that covers everything. The main one is the avionics. Okay, so avionics are off, magnetos are off, landing gear selector is down, and we'll turn on master power. Fuel quantity, if we look, actually those are set to the auxiliary tanks. Switch them back to the main tanks. We have sufficient fuel. We have plenty of fuel to go to Zurich, and we will lower the flaps and turn on the alternators. I was pretty sure I turned them off last time. That's one thing I missed. Can be a little difficult at times spotting the position of some of the controls. Let's turn some. Let's get some heat in. And the door is closed and latched. Cowl flaps open. The cowl flaps do have effect on the cylinder head temperature, which is good to see. Beacon on, as we're going to be starting the engine. Throttle open slightly, about a half an inch. Put the left prop full forward. And the electric pump off or on for the left engine. It doesn't seem possible to flood the engines. It seems that we have a simplified engine start with that. Mixture rich. And magnetos on and start. reduce power a little bit to 1000 RPM. I want to be between about 800 and 1200. Oil pressure is in the green. And then we'll do the same for the right engine. Which is now running. And again, oil pressure is good on the right engine. So now we have both engines started. And we will turn on the navigation beacon. And that concludes starting engines. So on to before taxi, the electric fuel pumps off. Wing flaps retract. Landing gear indicator is green. Avionics master on. Let's look at the radios. We're looking for ATIS 135.575.
Geneva information Papa. 500 Zulu weather. Wind calm. Visibility more than 10. Sky conditions 12,500 feet. 30,500 broken. Temperature.
So we have the altimeter set. Rate of climb is 0. I'll start looking at navigation. Okay, I'm going to set up. We're going to set up the G530. There's already a flight plan. So it's a good idea to delete that. So we have Geneva already entered, obviously. First thing that we're going to do is enter the destination. Let's confirm the Switzerland and Zurich. So now we have the departure airport and the arrival. Now what we're going to do is, we know the active runway is runway 23, so we're going to set the departure. And as it's runway 23, we're going to be using Molos 3 Alpha. So now we have a departure, we have a departure airport and arrival airport, and we have the standard instrument departure. You would normally enter a stall or an approach at this point, so obviously we don't know the runway until we arrive at Zurich. Do here, having reviewed the flight plan. You can see in the bottom left is the ground speed, which is going to be very important. And we'll switch to GPS. So our flight plan is complete and ready. Okay, now we set up the autopilot. That's set up to navigation. And we have to zero the trim. So that's about zero. It's very difficult to judge if that's actually going to be anywhere near zero, but you get it as close to level as possible and take it from there. So all of that is now done and everything is ready for us to go. At takeoff we get to 500 feet above ground level and we'd activate the autopilot and we'd then just manage the climb. So now we move on to taxi. Turn on the taxi light. Now as you can see, the taxi light doesn't actually put out much light. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch on the landing lights. The taxi light gives you just enough light to get you into trouble because you're not going to have enough view of what's going on around you. It gives you a false sense of security that you have a little bit of light, and especially in situations like this where there's a lot of lighting around the aircraft, it can be quite a shock when you move out of those pools of light. If we're looking at it, we're going to the right. See the runway lights in that direction. Disconnect the brake and we'll start rolling. We're coming up to the turn off now. C, B is indicated. Ground speed is under control. As you can see, the markings are a little bit indistinct. Turn off. I'm looking for the whole short position. I'll just creep forward a little bit. Get ourselves straightened out. Stop here, and we're going to go through some checks. Make sure it's full reach, props are full forward, throttle at 2000 RPM. Cycle throttles to operate the governor. I'm not really sure if this is simulated all that well. It's one of those things that to me is not quite simulated properly. Get it back down to 1000. Doesn't seem quite right compared to the real aircraft. I can't feather the props properly, but I'll just cycle them. That's the kind of a drop you'd expect, but I don't seem to be able to put the props into the feather position. And manifold pressure down to 15 inches. Ammeter looks like it's charging. Section looks good. 4.8 to 5.1. Our temperature looks good. Oil pressure is in the green. I'm going to tell the throttles. In fact, I just missed out one check. Let's go back to 15. I want to check the magnetos. And they look good for the left engine. Try the right engine. Again, the drops are around the same for both. We'll retard the throttle and set transponder to altitude. Autopilot is set, nav and pitch are set. Fuel selectors are set to inboard main. Electric fuel pumps are on. Wing flaps as desired, we don't need any flaps, but plenty of runway. Directional gyro set to the runway heading, which it is. An elevator trim for takeoff. It's a little bit difficult to spot from there, but I'm going to assume that is about, I think it needs a bit more. It's one of those things you have to memorize in daylight conditions, and I haven't yet memorized it, but I think that should be fine. There's a red band across the trim indicator. I find if you set trim to that red band, which I think is a takeoff setting, the aircraft will take off by itself at takeoff speed, but then it climbs like an absolute rocket. So I'm not sure if that's the best takeoff setting. You could use that, but you then have to, as soon as you take off, you've got to adjust the trim to maintain something like a 700 to 1000 feet per minute climb. So all gauges are normal. Everything's looking good. Turn the strobes on. Take the lights off at this point. And that is it. We are now ready to take off and head out to Zurich. So hope you found that useful, hope you found that entertaining. That is how you start and prepare the aircraft for the flight. At this point, climb out to 500 feet AGL, engage the autopilot, and use the thumb wheel for the trim to set the desired vertical speed. Set the, in fact you can do it now, you can set the pitch, and then you use the trim wheel to adjust the VSI, obviously referring to the vertical speed indicator. It's not a system that you may be familiar with if you're used to using Bendix systems, but once you have a basic understanding of it, it's simple enough to operate. It's not at all complicated. On approach, if I can just zoom in, when you're using the ILS, you'll switch to localizer normal, and then you're looking for the glide slope engaged light to come on. That doesn't always work for me. It didn't work in the previous version at all, in fact. And now, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I'm not quite sure what's going on with that. So yes, there we are. We're prepared for takeoff to Zurich. Hope you enjoyed that, and as always, feel free to like, comment and subscribe.